Hello everyone. Welcome to the Dev Hangout number 2. Dev Hangout number 2 is all about JarApp and what we can do with Unleash and so much more. This is a safe space for our community to come join in and talk about their issues with Unleash, what they want to do with Unleash, and so much more, right? So today we'll talk to you about what's new with Unleash, of course, and in some time we'll invite Rohan from JarApp and understand how they set up their development environment, how they do testing, and and take your questions. So make sure you stick around, right? First up, we'll start it inviting everyone to come join us in these calls, right? Be a part of the live stream from the next one. So uh, make sure you join us on our Slack community, right, and our GitHub community, because that's where we'll be announcing from the next time that okay, this is where you can join. So here's the link for the Slack community, and here's the link for GitHub. So make sure you join there, take a look at the announcements, and we'll constantly invite our community to be a part of these calls, be a part of the conversation, and and talk us through what your experience is with Unleash. Right. So first up, I'll invite Ivar, our CTO and CPO, and the founder of Unleash. So hello.
Hey, Prancho. Nice to meet you again.
Nice to meet you again.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. I do miss to see the sun, though. I think I haven't seen it for a week now, so hopefully I will come back soon.
Yeah. Thankfully, Berlin has some sun, but it's still too cold and windy and rainy.
So what is too cold for you? Is it like 2 degrees plus, or is it 10 minus?
I mean, my hometown is 45 degrees in summers, right? And summers here are like 20 degrees. So it's
and that's Celsius.
Anything
obviously.
below. Anything below 18, I think it's winters for me. And right now it's 4 degrees in Berlin. So Nice. Perfect. So Ivar, tell us about what's new with Unleash, right? What are we launching? What are we releasing?
It's a lot of things actually, and happy to get that question. So I just also wanted to highlight a small change that we have been doing with the latest 2 releases. So we decided to move into a more regular cadence on when we take out a release of Unleash, meaning our goal at least is to take out 1 release every month, and we will mostly focus on the last week of the month to take out that release. So 420 came out on Friday, obviously. Because we release on Fridays. That's a nice thing. But it also means that we are using our cloud platform now to actually test the functionalities we are building. So when we take out a release, the functionality has already been through beta in behind the flag, obviously. And we have tested it for a while and validated that it both performs but also solves the problem the right way before we decide to make it generally available in an actual release.
Right. So first things first, why release on Fridays?
Because we can. And it should be safe. It should be fun to do a release, and you should have the control mechanisms in place to make sure that it's safe to release on Fridays as well.
Yeah, 100%. So what have we launched on Fridays and what have we not?
So recently there is a bunch of things, and some of the things that is I think is important to know is that we introduced favorites that came in general available on Friday, allowing you to star feature toggles or projects that you care about. Obviously, the first step is to allow you to star it and make it possible to filter on the things you have started for yourself and nobody else. But we also have some plans, obviously, in the future. We are looking into a notifications capability, and we think that things that is that important to you that you decide to favorite it to be think getting updates on the changes of those things probably is very interesting to you.
I completely agree with that. Like in conversation with open source users, I think we go on to have a lot of feature toggles in our list, right?
Yeah.
And and the ability to do favorites, I think having those on top of your list makes it easier to focus on certain toggles first, right?
Yeah,
So I think it's
and
quite
favorites
interesting.
is meant to be a very personal thing. Another feature that we have done recently that is also available to open source is that we have done some improvements or a tagging capability. So tags is a way to kind of group your toggles. It allows you to bring some semantic context to why does these toggles exist and how do they relate. And in Unleash, we have something we call typed tags, so allowing you also to not just have a string value, but you can also do some context. So maybe it's a group, maybe it's a team, maybe it is an application. And again, what we have done in this release is that we allow you to filter on that. And obviously tags goes across persons. So it's something that is not for you personally like a favorite, but it's something that it brings kind of structure to the entire team using Unleash. And again, it's a more convenient way to kind of group toggles that you care about and you want to do some operations on, for instance.
Nice. So you don't just have to have a naming convention for your toggles, right? You can have tags now and group them according to, say, this is a UI toggle, this is a backend
Absolutely.
toggle.
And we have had tags for a long time, but we haven't allowed you to filter on those easily in the UI. You have been able to do that from the API, but now we're also bringing that to the UI itself. So you can use the filtering capability in where you are looking at toggles and filter toggles with a specific tag and a value.
Nice. That's perfect. That's perfect. What else? What else have we released?
Yeah, so we are doing another thing that I think that was generally available in 490, the personal API tokens.
Yeah.
So in the past, if you wanted to interact with Unleash API, you would use something called an admin token, and it kind of is a bit stupid because the admin token is allowed to do anything in Unleash, and that can sometimes not be what you want. You might want to do an integration with Unleash, but you still would like to carry some of the RBAC capabilities or the permission capabilities that already exist in Unleash. And so what we allow you to do now is that you can create a token for a user, and you can use that token, and that token will basically behave as that user and do operation on behalf of that user, but as via the API instead, meaning that you can have the same permission or it will follow the permission of the user.
Right.
And this is on our journey to deprecate the admin tokens. So eventually, we plan to take away admin tokens. Eventually, we will do that obviously gradually, and we will do that in a safe manner. But that's our long-term goal, is to get rid of that and only have SDK tokens and then personal access tokens for the others.
Right. So it's interesting how in the last couple of releases we've focused more on granular control while giving the flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 100%. And what about the new SDKs, right? We've launched a
Yes.
couple of SDKs.
Yeah, we have. So we have now an official Flutter SDK, and it's interacting as a front-end SDK instead of a server-side SDK, as the community developed Flutter SDK was built. So now you can use Unleash in your Flutter application. You can connect either to a Unleash proxy, or you can connect directly to the front-end API.
Right.
And consume Unleash in a safe way from a Flutter application. And we see a lot of demand on this. So immediately, like the day after we announced it, we had like 15 stars on GitHub and a lot of downloads immediately. So there was a need in the market, and we also heard it a lot from a user. This was actually the most requested SDK that we had. Together with another SDK that is kind of interesting. So it's the Next.js integration. So we got a lot of questions from users like, how can I safely integrate Unleash with Next.js application? A lot of people are using the Next.js framework. And obviously you could use the regular front-end SDK or the React SDK, but there was some some glitches around how do you then solve server-side rendering in a safe way? How do you
Right.
get kind of optimize it for that type of applications?
Right.
And one of our team started investigating it a bit and actually come to the conclusion that it was actually better to have a curated integration. So we decided to do an early version. This is a very early version of a Next.js SDK, just to
Right.
simplify that journey for people.
Yeah. I mean, the React SDK does make sense to use with the Next.js, framework, but yeah, it does allow more control, right? The new SDK.
Absolutely, and also more flexibility. So obviously, if you only are rendering client side and you don't have any server side concerns at all, then using the React SDK will be the way to go. But
True.
when you want those more advanced application, maybe you do some rendering on the server side, but you also do something in the client side, and you have a mix of things. Then the work we have been starting on the Next.js and the work we are planning, we're also planning to obviously cover this with some examples, blog posts, kind of some good examples to follow, because people do Next.js apps in quite different ways, actually, and using different parts of that ecosystems. And we want to be flexible enough to support any scenario. But there are some thoughts into how to do that the correct way, in a scalable way.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, and I think that also stands true for Flutter because even with Flutter, you have the option to go for iOS, Android, and web, right?
Yes.
And doing feature toggles with Dart directly, I think it gives you more control on your toggles. But for each app individually, right, which I think it's quite important for developers, right?
Absolutely.
100%. Perfect. It was a lot of releases, right? It was a lot of features, and I think that also stands true for how our team ships all of these
Absolutely.
features. Yeah, it's quite fast. I think from the previous Dev Hangout to this Dev Hangout, there are so many things that we've released. I think we haven't even been able to talk about all of those, but yeah,
There is a long list of other things that we are working on that also has been released, but I think these are
yeah,
the highlights for the community. And if you have more specific needs, there is a bunch of enterprise functionality that we haven't talked about. But I think if enterprise customers are listening, they're probably already aware, or they can come catch us up afterwards, I guess, to get more
yeah.
insight on that.
Well, I think everyone can, whoever's interested actually can go ahead and look at our roadmap in
Yeah,
our GitHub, right?
absolutely.
So yeah, go ahead. There are issues, there are GitHub discussions. Go ahead, create a GitHub discussion, something that you want us to build for you. If it's a specific requirement, if you think it could help anyone, if you want to contribute, right? Go to GitHub, start a discussion. We're right there. We're listening to you, and yeah, just join in the
I think,
conversation.
but I think that's a really good point you're making there, because every project, we call it a project because of the tool we're using, but every enhancement we do into Unleash, we really prefer when we can kind of connect it to a company, a user, or a customer having
Right.
these needs. It allows us to bring more context to what we are building. And it's so much easier to prioritize something where we can reach out to someone, get some validation that we are doing
Sure.
it, not just solving the problem, but solving it in a sensible way.
Yeah, that's correct. That's definitely true. And for anyone who's watching, for anyone who's interested in seeing what we've released, what we have been releasing, what's coming up, there are a lot of beta tags as well in our releases. So again, go to our GitHub, check out our release page. We've released a lot of things. We talk about a lot of things on our GitHub. So go ahead, join the conversation, and we'll be looking out for you for sure. Right. And while you're there, leave us a star, of course. How can I forget that? Right. So let's move ahead. Right. We have a guest with us from JarApp. Some time ago, Rohan from JarApp, he wrote a blog about cohort-based A/B testing using Unleash and Redis, right? And that was a bit of a hit within our community, where more users, more of our community members started doing A/B testing and started doing cohort-based A/B testing. So we have some questions from them, of course, but I would like to invite Rohan on the stream. So yes, hi, welcome, Rohan.
Hey, Banchu. Hey, everyone.
Hello.
For having me over. It's great to catch up with you.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. So Rohan, first of all, introduce yourself to our community.
Right. Hey, I'm Rohan. So, I work at a startup called JAR. We are based out of Bangalore in India, and we are a fintech. We are a fintech app which primarily looks into improving the savings culture of Indian users, and we look to build like a complete savings platform which looks into all the savings needs of users. And we started off in early 2021.
Yeah.
So yeah, so over time we built things over digital gold. So basically, our
Hmm.
primary product as of now is digital gold, and we look to expand towards multiple assets, multiple ways, and not limited to any asset or anything, but we look to become a complete platform of sorts for improving savings or users. So that's about what JAR does, and I've been in the backend team from almost day one, and I've been
Hmm.
working here, and we built a lot of system, broke a lot of systems, done a lot of experiments, done a lot of critical releases, maybe something on the sorts of like uh, you could make or break everything in a day, and a lot of those kind of work that we pulled off in the last couple of years. And yeah, so that's what we've come up to now, and we continue to experiment, continue to check out features, continue to look for more ways to improve like the user
Hmm.
experience and what we provide at JAR.
Nice. That's perfect. I think I do have a question about savings. So, uh, savings is huge in India, right? I'm an Indian. I know that, my parents loved savings, right? But how important is it to save through an app today, right?
Correct.
Because all the money that we see is digital right now, right? We don't use cash. In our parents' generation, it was a lot of cash. So
Right.
they went to the bank, they saved in a safe and stuff. But why a digital app to do savings, right? And why digital assets at that?
Got it. So basically, India is like very inclined to saving. So even if it is from the extent of a piggy bank to the extent of maybe on a savings account, the point
Hmm.
is the underlying core uh, urge to save is always there. So
Yeah.
we built upon that, and we use an asset that most Indians trust, which is gold.
Hmm.
And so Indians understand gold very well, and they understand how it appreciates, depreciates, and they understand it better than most people elsewhere would. So we started off with a product with most people didn't have any aversion against. They were very comfortable with that. So it was a very, and you can start as a rupee, as low as rupees 10. So that'll be a few cents in conversion. So basically, when a user can start saving at that low an amount, I think they build trust over time, and they also understand what they're building. So let's say if you've seen a lot of users on Twitter and other social platform, like where after a month they've saved a huge amount of money even without them actually knowing. So basically, our thesis also is the fact that people spend, and while they spend, we also save. So basically, saving becomes a habit, and that habit forming is what takes us forward in terms of like for the user and jar as a product for the user.
Does that mean
Nice.
that you have some kind of micro saving every time you pay with your
Right.
card? You will automatically save into your
Yes.
JAR account?
Yeah. So basically, what we
Oh,
do
that's
is
fantastic.
so every spend that you do, right? So we detect that spend, and based on that spend, we round it off to the next 10. So let's say you spend 2 rupees, we round it off to the nearest 10, which is 10,
Yeah.
and we save that in digital gold for you. So basically, every time you spend, so our thesis also is coming from the fact that spending is not bad,
Mhm.
but it's more to do with building the habit of saving along.
Yeah.
So that's what most of what is jar is built around. And the like the future of jar also will see like multiple other ways that we will help users save and uh, figure out how their financial journey and all of those things. That's how we are going forward at jar.
Cool.
Nice. That's perfect. What digital assets do you help users to save with?
So right now we only have digital gold.
Yeah.
So digital gold, and like I mentioned earlier, like very trusted product. People understand it completely. They already own a lot of physical gold. So
Mhm.
the digital form was just a matter of like introduction, and people caught onto it pretty easily. So people understand, and it's a matter of trust building, right? So people
Yeah,
believe in what they see and what they trust in terms of gold. So yeah, and that's the asset that everyone in India understands. So
true.
that's why we went ahead with digital gold.
True. So, will I be able to order the digital gold as physical gold?
Yes. So basically, you can
Nice.
deliver it in form of coins or
Nice.
coin bars or whatever. So basically, we work through a provider, and then they will give you an option of like getting it delivered at your house, and you should like you order it and be at your place in a couple of days. So yeah, that's how we work.
Oh,
Cool.
nice.
I can see
Interesting.
that gold bar coming up with your spending, Pranshu. It will not
Of
just be
course.
coins.
Of course, that's where all my savings go. Gold bars. Right.
Right.
So when we talk about savings, right, and especially since you're a fintech company, you go through a lot of transactions every day.
Right.
So tell me, why is it important to build a robust backend
Like
for a lot of transactional processing?
right. So basically, like it comes down to as simple as how you would follow the cap theorem. And I believe
Mm,
strongly that everything comes down to the cap theorem. So if you look in the long run, right? So you can build an available system, but with money,
mm,
people you're dealing with real people's money, and it
right.
come and that comes with a lot of responsibility on this thing. So consistency matters a lot, and the problem is like it's like if you don't focus on consistency over a period of time, you will never
Mhm,
be able to build a robust system which scales. So you can probably build a system without a proper transaction system or without a proper ledger system or all of these things for like let's say 1,000 users. But from 1,000 to 10,000 is a different game. 10,000 to maybe a 1 million users is a very different game, and the amount of money you will be dealing with also changes exponentially. So it's very important to like build very robust systems, and most robust systems are built on very fundamental principles. So it's
mm,
about like always ensuring that we figure out what really matters. It's like sometimes there will always be trade-offs. There will be a lot of constraints. There are a lot of third-party regulations, compliance, and all of that thing. So building a system around all these constraints and also building a system that is robust enough that like let's say everything in the world goes wrong, but we should protect our users money. So
true.
that is the kind of sort of principle that we work with, and we always tend to achieve that. That's always our goal. Like we will take maybe a long time to achieve a perfect place, and feel like we'll never reach perfection, but the point is that we always strive to improve every bit which will protect the users money and build the most scalable system in terms of like scaling out indefinitely. That would be our goal.
100%. 100%.
It
So,
really makes me happy that you're talking about the cap theorem,
yeah.
and obviously I would love, or I would expect my bank to prefer consistency. If not, I will be a bit scared. It
Yeah.
seems
Right,
like some of the blowups in the blockchain community has proven that they maybe not that concerned about consistency. I don't know.
right,
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's as you say, it's back to trade-offs. You cannot have it all. You need to decide what's important to you. And for Unleash, we have also considered the cap theorem, and we have chosen the part of being more available, like the AP, like that part of the performance scale, because it makes sense in our domain, in our context. Like we are helping you releasing software in a safe
Mhm,
way, but we shouldn't get in your way of being part of making your app slower. And we can take that trade-off that yes, we will not always be consistent across all the SDKs connecting to Unleash,
mhm.
but that's okay if you're using it the right way and you understand the cap theorem and why we do that trade-off.
right.
I think it's also important to recap at this point about cap theorem because there are some people who might not know cap theorem. So can any of you uh, give a small introduction to the cap theorem?
I
Yeah, I
will.
can.
You are
I can
excited.
try. I can try, but I would actually. This is something I always look up on Wikipedia. I have to be true to that. So in very kind of high terms, what you cannot both be. So CAP theorem is kind of three different things. It's about consistency, availability, and persistent tolerance.
Mhm.
And there is a theorem. I cannot remember who created it, but I can yeah, we can look it up after. It's someone called Brewer's theorem,
Mhm.
and what he is kind of claiming is that you cannot have all three at the same time in the same system. You have to choose two.
Right.
So usually you are choosing between either you are consistent and partition tolerant, or you're available and partition tolerant. So if you're consistent, that means that you would typically do kind of write to all. If you have, for instance, multiple databases, replicas of your database, you will write to all before you kind of release that transaction.
Mhm.
While if you prefer available, you might allow a write and then synchronize in the background, meaning there will be typically what you end up with is that you will be eventual consistent, but you will not
Yeah.
always be consistent. So if you do a read from one of the replicas, you might get a different answer.
Right.
But if you do a read a bit later, you might get the same answer, and that's the eventual consistency kicking in.
Nice.
But you have
Right.
to
So
choose, basically. You cannot have it all.
yeah, and I think that's where Rohan's point comes in about like striving to perfection, right? You can't always be perfect, but at the same time, because it's users' money, you have to focus on cap theorem and make sure it's persistent, make sure it's consistent, and make sure it's available at all times because it's somebody else's money, it's not your own, right?
Yeah. And it builds around the fact that also like uh, as a user I wouldn't be worried about whether or not I'm using the best engineering practices and all of those things, right? So it all comes down to the fact that uh, the best engineering practices lead to a good experience.
Yeah.
So the thing is, the experience is what matters at the end, and how all of the practices and how a robust system can enable that experience is what we always strive to, right? Because we
Mhm.
could be using the best cloud infrastructure, best practices, everything. But if at the end of the day, if user is not convinced about the security, safety, and everything
Yeah.
around what they are investing in JAR, I think then we will need to rethink. But that's what we strive to, is to always ensure that we as a we as a system build very robust and like everything like architecture wise to build it very like scalable maybe, and like how many ever users are coming onto the platform, it couldn't be a issue in terms of like experience, in terms of like uh, availability. And a lot of times, like if you see a lot of bank apps, right, so most people have that issue that bank apps don't aren't reliable, like they have like a lot of downtime and stuff like that. People build that bias, right? So we want to not go into that place, and we want to also look uh, at from the user's perspective
Yeah.
to give that best experience out there.
100%. And even from an engineering standpoint, right? So you do a lot of transactions. So can you mentioned this in the blog, right? Where you mentioned that with every transaction, it has to go through a fraud detection engine. So
Yep.
how does that come into play along with your backend?
Right. So basically, whenever we go through any system, right? So as like any financial instrument, we are also prone to fraud or any of those issues. And so what we proactively check for all the parameters that we've seen in the past, and others in the industry have been following. So
Hmm.
basically, we follow like whatever practices are followed across the industry, and uh, a pattern that we've seen of our own. So we try to match any of those transactions if they fall into any of those buckets, and we basically continuously add on to this the list of buckets that could be fraudulent transactions,
Hmm.
and ensure that no transaction is going into the fraudulent in terms of protecting the system and also protecting the users at the same time.
Yes. Quite interesting. I never would have thought that a savings app, comes under the same bucket for fraud detection. But yeah, it's sort of blowing my mind right now. But yeah, coming back to the topic, so tell me, how often do you do A/B testing at
Right.
JarApp?
So basically, Right. So basically, if you see the journey of Jar in the last couple of years, we've scaled to a few million users. We've scaled to a lot of our daily active users, daily transacting users have grown exponentially. And with such exponential growth, also comes with the fact that we need to experiment continuously to build the best experience for a user, right? So, and that comes with a continuous requirement to like also persevere towards like building a system which allows experiments while also not increasing the development time or increasing the lead time towards building a product, right? So most of the product needs to be A/B tested. We have diverse set of users in India, so uh,
Yeah.
based on different parameters, we might have to A/B test based on a particular set of users, and what works on this particular set of users might not work on others. So we continuously strive to figure out what sort of experimentation we go about, and more so we do like we do an easily a handful of experiments every couple of days,
Mhm.
and it can last as little as 7 days and then
Yeah.
go up to a month. So basically, the system we built around Unleash on top of Unleash is more so to do with the fact that we leverage Redis so to take care of that part of the problem where we can
Right.
ensure user stickiness for a fixed amount of time. So that's what
Right.
we built around experimentation at JarApp.
Nice. So a handful of experiments every couple of days, and those can last as long as 7 days. Quite interesting.
And
So
some up to a month also
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course, the range could
Yeah.
evolve as well based on the feature that you want to test.
Yes.
What is the longest experiments you have ever run? Do you know?
Yeah, we've run around for 1.5 months, a couple of
One
experiments.
and a half months. Yeah.
So basically, and all of that is on Redis, and we've seen like almost 100% uh, data sanity. So we've not lost any data or lost any experiment data. So
Yeah.
that's thumbs
Wow.
up to Redis and Unleash. So yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
that's perfect. So, you mentioned Unleash and Redis. Are there any other tools that you tried out to experiment with?
So basically, in terms of experimentation, right? So we were looking for more. So there are a lot of paid tools out there. Like we are like we've explored a couple of them, and we
Mm.
stumbled upon Unleash, and it was open source. So basically, we uh, like most of the devs in the company are like very pro open source and trying to figure out what's the best way to host it and all of those things.
Right.
So we like to self host everything, so as much as possible. So that's how we stumbled upon Unleash, and we set up Unleash. And from day one, we were pretty impressed with the kind of scalability we were seeing. And in terms of like growth, like we've seen almost uh, 3x, 4x growth in the last uh, 3, 4 months in terms of like traffic and all of those things.
Yeah.
So and still Unleash has held up pretty well. So
Yeah.
in terms of like availability, we've not seen any issues that have caused due to Unleash. So
Nice.
we are now way more confident in adding Unleash to a lot of our core functionalities where we
Yeah.
need to switch on a toggle, switch off a toggle, and even if the toggle is getting checked 1 lakh, 2 lakh times a second, it's still
Mm-hmm.
very reliable and it doesn't cause any performance loss as of now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why one of the main reasons we are very confident with Unleash, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why we continue to use and build on top of what Unleash already offers.
Nice.
So
That's perfect.
you did mention that stickiness is very important to you guys, and what are you basing the stickiness on?
So let's say I set a cohort which says 50% will see A and 57 see B. The problem we faced initially with Unleash was that when we put the 50%, it is based on IP,
Yeah.
like based on IP or like a sort of round robin, right? So what happens is, let's say a user will see cohort A and user might see cohort B as well. So which was sort of like anti-pattern for our needs. So what we did
Yeah.
is we built a sticky layer around Redis where we uh, cache the feature payload onto our
Mm-hmm.
Redis system. And we built a wrapper before we hit Unleash. We check if it is there in our Redis system. And if it is there in our Redis system, we pick it up from Redis cache. And then if it's not there, only then we go and hit Unleash. So the balance also is maintained. So let's say we make 75, 25%. So even in terms of number of requests and number of users that are getting, we are almost there. Like the balance is always maintained because
Right.
Yeah.
the distribution will always be eventually there. So that was what we achieved, and that was working amazing for us. So and with Redis, we were able to achieve your like optimal stickiness as well.
Nice.
Cool.
That's quite interesting. So yeah, but tell me, like, I think this is not really a stereotype with devs, but devs always try to build versus buy.
Right.
So did you or did any of your devs try to build a feature flagging solution before actually going for something like Unleash, or were you
Uh,
looking for a tool altogether?
to be honest, we were looking for a tool because, like, as a high growth startup, like sometimes you also consider, right, like it's not always about, like I told you, right, if you're not able to deliver quickly to the users, then all our good engineering is gone to waste. So
Yeah,
we were looking for a tool continuously, and we tried a couple of our iterations on our own, like in terms of
yeah.
like writing logic in the code, and it wasn't scalable for sure, but it worked for the time being. But yeah, eventually when we stumbled upon Unleash, we took it a step ahead.
Nice. That's perfect. And right now, even the wrapper. So, uh, you mentioned that the wrapper basically helps you, measure the stickiness and then make sure that you release along the cohort. So, does the wrapper decide the cohort? Like, how do you basically go around with with your cohort as well? Yeah,
So there are two ways. So ideally, we can we I try within both. So
yeah,
sometimes we want to define the cohort before in hand based on our, like, we would have done some analysis and come up to a
yeah.
particular cohort. So what we do
Right.
is we feed that directly into Redis.
Okay.
So it will not hit Unleash anytime. But so
Yeah,
when we want to do a random at a random 50% split experiment,
yeah.
so the wrapper hits Unleash unless it first checks in Redis. It's like a
Okay.
basically a read through cache. So basically it reads first
Mm.
from the cache, and
Yeah,
if it's not there in the cache, then it reads from Unleash, because Unleash already does the distribution already. So
yeah.
eventually, what is there in the cache and what is the experiment split will always never go away from the intended experiment split. It's
Mm-hmm.
50-50. It will never go like it will become suddenly 80-20 because of
Mm-hmm.
this. So the split mechanism on Unleash itself make sure that our system also is consistent with that split.
Nice.
That's super fascinating because obviously
Yeah.
Unleash is not remembering. So it kind of solves that if a user already has been assigned to a cohort or a variant, you kind of make that consistent for that
Exactly.
user. What Unleash does do for you, obviously, is that if you provide that stickiness, it will actually calculate the same result.
Yeah,
So say you are providing a user ID, you would be able to solve part of that problem, but that also requires you to never change the experiment, obviously, during
exactly.
while the
Yeah, and
experiment is running, and it also requires you to have something to be sticky on, obviously.
exactly. And sometimes what also happens is like our experiments run on, let's say, 1 million users each.
Yeah,
So feeding in 1 million users each into Unleash is what wouldn't be very practical. But on Redis, it's a very simple, like it'll
yeah.
take a probably 10-line script to feed in users into the cohort. So yeah, that worked pretty well for us.
Exactly. That's why my next question was going to be why Redis, right? And I
Why
think
Redis?
why Redis?
Right. So basically, my I personally like Redis a lot because uh, one thing, it's proven over time,
Mhm.
and the and the best part about it is that TTL is reliable. Like if you look at any other system, we use a lot of other key value pair systems and all of those things, and we've faced issues with the fact that the TTL is never reliable.
Mhm.
And Redis is built so well around TTL and how they expire the keys and how their garbage collection works. It's so efficient that you don't need to worry about. So let's say I set a key for 1 month. I can very
Mhm.
reliably think that after 1 month I will not get that key,
Right.
irrespective of how the garbage collection works. So internally, Redis has also grown so well over the years that it's become very reliable, and people have built like amazing systems around it. So, uh, and like of late, even with their improvements in RDB file and ADB file and all of those things, they've eventually reached as good as like a DB which is stored in disk. So once you have a reliable system around Redis, like you don't really worry about loss of data unless, and this data. So let's say, and here again we come to the like the availability part, right? So this is very highly available. And let's say one
Right.
user slips out of a particular cohort, it's very little of a loss compared to if we had to, let's say, store this on a relational database. And if you had to
Mm-hmm.
store this on a relational database, it's going to be very costly, and you have to run continuous crons to delete the data continuously. And we have and the thing is, the requirements for experiments are also very vast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think Redis was very easy. And like, let's say you want to disable an experiment, like you feel suddenly the experiment is not required at all. It's very
Yeah.
easy to unlink all the keys from Redis, and it'll unlink all the keys in that particular pattern. So when it's as simple as that, I think we were like, it was very like a first choice of sorts to go
Yeah.
with Redis in this solution.
It's almost like music to my ears, like choosing the simple path to solve problems and add complexity as needed, instead of kind of jumping into the most complex solution you can find without really understanding what you need.
Right.
It's just music to my ears.
Nice. That's perfect. So, apart from using Unleash and Redis, right? What else is in your stack to build Jar?
Right. So basically, where our stock is jar, like we primarily use AWS for all our cloud infra and everything. And basically, we also use MongoDB Atlas,
Mm-hmm.
and MongoDB Atlas. We use MongoDB, Postgres, DynamoDB, which primarily compresses our databases, and we have a couple of internal tools we we use uh, in terms of like internal tooling, cron jobs, schedule jobs, and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But primarily, we are focused on like Spring Boot for our main applications.
Nice. Interesting. I've never really used Spring Boot myself, but
Okay.
yeah, I was actually amazed revisiting after such a long time when we were doing Spring Boot at Unleash, right? That
Uh,
how far it has come.
right.
In Yeah, nice. That's perfect. A last few questions, right? So tell me, how do you optimize for speed when you're experimenting and shipping continuously?
So when you mean speed, do you mean in speed in terms of performance, or do you mean speed in terms of shipping?
I would say speed in terms of performance.
Speed in terms of performance, right? So when we're using Unleash, so again, very fundamental concept is that like adding as many amount of like lines of code that are conditions is going to slow the
Mhm.
code down. it's
Yeah.
it's like however optimized each line of code is, it's going to slow it at some level, right?
Yeah.
So if an experiment or if a feature toggle is not absolutely necessary, we avoid adding it there. It's as simple as that. So if an experiment is required, like we first consider like what impact or whatever impact in terms of business, in terms of like product improvement and all those things. We first
Hmm.
consider as to what impact it can create, and then we build around the fact that this this is the amount of impact that we create, and we add that flag there. But again, like coming back to my previous point, that we've not seen any performance degradation in terms of because of using Unleash, or our entire system of A/B testing has not slowed down our system. It's very silently working its way up. So it's not a hindrance of any sort. So yeah, that way we are pretty happy with how our system is coming along.
Nice.
Cool. So after you run those experiments, what are your processes in terms of cleaning up, making sure you take away those unnecessary lines of code after you have concluded the
Right.
experiment?
Right. So basically, most of the experiments eventually we have like in our every release cycle, right? So we ensure that whatever code is being touched in the last, so we add a sort of to-do comments, and then we add a Jira ticket to get rid of that code. So we make it a practice to get rid of code proactively, whatever is not required, right? So there's a decent amount of code that's need to be added in terms of handling the logic based on what experiment flags are being live, right? So
Yeah.
we make it a point to add comments and when you want to get rid of the code. So, and in terms of clearing out the data, it's been pretty simple. Like with Redis, that was the biggest example of how that was very low maintenance in terms of cleaning out the data. So, but cleaning
Mhm.
out the code, yeah, it's a continuous process.
Yeah,
The
absolutely. And it's
data.
so important, and it's kind of is those unnecessary statements in your code that just add bloat, and it's kind of technical depth. I actually
Yeah,
saw some other company, they had a really nice add-on to this. So actually what I did, every time they introduced a new flag, either for experimentation or a release toggle or something like that, they actually also, as part of introducing the toggle, they also immediately created the pull request to remove that toggle again. So that as soon as they have concluded that this is the way forward, this is the new thing, this works, they already knew what to approve and apply to get rid of it again. So I thought that was a really interesting way of thinking about it.
I think if you use feature toggle to add code in your system, right, and experiment, you can use a feature toggle to remove code as well.
Yeah. So
Makes
yeah, I
complete
think
sense.
that's something that we could try next. I think probably that's something we'll try for sure. But that's some of the things we will always strive to get
Yeah.
better at.
Nice. I love that. I love that. So, Ivar, do you have any other questions for Rohan?
No, I think I just covered it throughout the talk, to be honest. But really fascinating to hear and learn about your experience,
Right.
Ron. Really, really exciting, actually.
Yeah, and I hope to use Unleash for the coming years to figure out more experiments, better functionality, and yeah, that's it's pretty exciting for my end as well.
Love that. Yeah. So, Rohan, one last question. Tell me if the wrapper that you created, is it open source? Is it available for everyone to use, or is it?
Right now, not. So basically, yeah,
Yeah.
this is under consideration to get it into some sort of open source format. So basically, it was written in some sort of an internal use case. But
Yeah.
yeah, we do plan to eventually open source that as a part
Nice.
of how to use that probably as a tool over Unleash.
Yeah. I think our community would love that because a lot of things on top of Unleash, right, comes from the community. A lot of
Right,
SDKs are built by the community. So,
right.
as a part of a community, we love to see that you have your own use case.
Right,
And
yeah. So certainly we could actually, since you put it out, I think we can create a Java SDK with very less effort because a lot of the code is in Java as is. So
yeah,
that will be, I think we'll get that done soon. So we will probably in the next coming months, we probably could see that wrapper around this also as probably an OpenJD.
yeah, 100%. Looking forward to it. I mean, yeah. I think a lot of our community members will also be looking forward to it. So if you are watching again GitHub discussions or YouTube comments, just tell us anywhere so that it can help us and Rohan out to release it if you really need it, if you like the implementation. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that is it for our questions. Yeah, I don't think we have any questions from the audience, but I think we filled up time with a lot of questions of our own anyway. Very enjoyable conversation here, Rohan.
Yeah, great talking to you guys as well. I mean, we've discussed in length about what JAR does to what Unleash has done for us and our entire journey, and that's been a really great experience to share it with you all as well.
Rohan, do you have a feature request for Unleash?
Oh, probably a feature request would have been this user stickiness, but since we
Mhm.
built it, but something that I proactively think that I would love to have in Unleash is probably something of a TTL of sorts. So if an experiment could kill itself, it
Yeah.
would be great because I feel like a lot of experiments get piled up over time, and it's just a matter of someone going and manually deleting it becomes a little tedious.
Yeah.
But if something of a TTL was there for an experiment which is not live, like let's say an experiment that's not being called at all, if it
Mhm.
could die on its own, it's very great. It will kill on its own. You don't need to worry
Yes.
about it. That's something that I'd look forward to.
Yeah. So if an experiment detects that it's no longer receiving any
Yeah,
usage, and after some time, it could just then archive itself automatically.
yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Thanks. I will put it on the list, and it could be
Yeah,
an
we would
interesting
love to see that
task.
on.
Nice. Yeah, incredible. I did not join the stream thinking that I would be taking feature requests, but yeah, I love that I did. Uh, all right then, awesome, awesome, Rohan. Thank you so much for doing the stream. Thank you so much for taking out the time to come over and talk about Unleash, right? And Redis and Jar and answering all our questions, right?
So
So tell us, where can we find you on the internet apart from Medium?
Medium, you can find me on LinkedIn, Rohan George,
Okay,
and you can ping me if you want to mail me. You can mail me at rohan@changear.in. So if you want
perfect.
to ever get in touch or you want to discuss what we've spoken over the stream, you can always mail me or ping me on LinkedIn. I am available on all of this. So yeah, that's how you can reach me.
100%. Awesome. Awesome, Rohan. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Right.
Thanks.
See you
Thanks for your
soon.
time.
Awesome. Bye bye.
Okay.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.
All right, Ivar. I think it's time to tell our community about our Slack community, right, and our
Yeah.
GitHub community. So if you're not already a part of our GitHub community, right, go to github.com/unleash, join our community, create a discussion, create feature requests, create an issue, right. Try out Unleash if you haven't already, and if you find any issues in the docs, in the product, any bugs, make sure you tell us. We're always listening. And while you're there, don't forget to star us on GitHub, right? And if you want to have a more private conversation with us, right, you can go to slack.unleash.run. That's where our Slack community exists. You'll, of course, get a message from me welcoming you always. So reply to that to have a private conversation with me, or if you want to reach out to anybody else, right? And just ask away. Compliment our team for a great product that our devs are building. And while you're at it, you can also follow us on Twitter, right? You can also follow us on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for attending our stream. And as a token of our appreciation, we have a gift for you. Right. So we have a small swag store, right? And you can go to bit.ly/unleash swag. And while you're at it, use the promo code JanHangout30 and you can get yourself a t-shirt. So make sure you go to bit.ly/unleash-swag, right? And use the promo code ChanHangout30 and order a t-shirt. If you have any issues, again, let us know on Slack or GitHub, right? Perfect. Anything you'd like to add, Ivar?
No, this was fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, this was amazing. I love the conversation flowing everywhere.
Absolutely.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I'll see everyone in our community on the internet, and see you soon, Ivar.
Okay. Take care.
Cheers.